Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Catalyst webinar series presented by the Education Committee for the Southern California PGA. The Catalyst webinar series is a bi-weekly educational platform for creating success and change in your club and career. We're very pleased and grateful to have Mr. Tim McNichols here from LIG Solutions. He's the Executive Director of Partnerships. Tim has been involved with associations and membership organizations for nearly 30 years as an executive with organizations like ASM International and the Heat Treating Society, as an industry partner with several leading companies serving the association marketplace, working with hundreds of companies and organizations just like ours. He joined the LIG Solutions as an executive director of partnerships in 2018 to work with membership organizations to deliver comprehensive and exclusive benefit solutions and health coverage options for the staff and members of the LIG Association partners. Good morning, Tim. Thanks for joining us this morning. This is definitely a time-sensitive and relevant webcast, and we're grateful for you to come on. Obviously, it's open enrollment season, and a lot of us, we're golf professionals, and this is not our forte. So we're grateful for you to come on and educate the section. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So to get started, let me share my screen here and we can kind of get into today's presentation. You should be able to see my screen now. Is that
not yet, but it looks like it's coming in. There we go. All right, rock and roll.
perfect? Well, again, I appreciate everyone joining us today. We're here to talk about health insurance. This can be, one of those topics that can be a little overwhelming for people at times, or at least just a little confusing. And that's, one of the things we're trying to eliminate today is some of that confusion or uncertainty and let you know, what your options are. As John pointed out, I've been working with associations for the majority of my career and membership organizations. And so I built a lot of that, experience into these programs here. When we start looking at what our options are, we're going to, kind of go through that and give you the landscape of what is real and what is, truly available to you today, as an individual, for your family and, even solutions if you're part of a business or a business owner, or just need to understand that. We'll dive into that just ever so briefly today. What we will cover is who is LIG. It's important to know who we are and what we do and why we do what we do. We'll talk about what are your options here in 2024 with the few months that are remaining, and then really look at what's coming up. As John pointed out, open enrollment is fast approaching. We start the first phase of open enrollment next week with Medicare open enrollment. Actually, it's annual enrollment, so we'll go through that and talk about those timeframes for individuals and families, and also just from an employer standpoint, if that's even something that is of interest. And then we'll talk about the program as a whole. What are the options in the marketplace, and then how to access this program, how to get that information, and how to talk to someone about your situations. LIG Solutions, we are part of Gallagher. We are a national broker, and that's important to note because as a broker, our relationship, our main concern is you as the member. We work with really every carrier in the marketplace, but at the end of the day, we work for you and not the carrier. That's a really important distinction, unlike, say, something like a State Farm agent where they're representing just State Farm. We're looking at all and any solution, and it's all needs-based. We'll get into that and talk a little bit about that today. Our specialization is in individual health insurance for those that are under 65, for those that are of Medicare age. We also do have, and this is a big part of what we do, is some group solutions. And a lot of that we now have as part of our relationship with Gallagher as well. As a company, LIG, we were founded in 2009. We became part of Gallagher in May of 2022. And it's just been a wonderful experience becoming part of that organization, which is also why we're involved with the PGA. We do work with the PGA on a national level. This program is really very distinct for you within Southern California. As a company, the majority of our staff is based in Independence, Ohio, but we do have people around the country. When you start looking at what we are kind of focusing on here today, health insurance really for those that are under 65, the individuals and families, the Medicare side of things. supplemental coverage options, things like dental and vision. We do have then the employer solutions with things called HRAs and traditional group plans. Today, we have a team of over 50 agents that work with our VIP, which are our association members. And really, they're set up, I think just about every single one of our agents is licensed for the state of California, but we're able to sell in all 50 states. So if you're, spending part of your time in California and part of your time in another state, or have family members that are, not in the state on a regular basis, we can look at all the different solutions that will impact you, which then comes up to, this is just, kind of a graphical, treatment of what we're able to do. It's important to note there are a few states that have some limitations on them, and it's basically because of the state rules. Massachusetts is one that really shouldn't impact too many people here. Washington State, they want individuals and families in those states that are under 65 to go through their state exchange and don't allow outside brokers to do anything in a state like Massachusetts or Washington. But outside of that, Medicare and our group elements, there's no limitations on what we can do. We're able to sell in all 50 states. And even in some of the states like Washington, we're still able to do some products and some different coverage options, just not ACA plans. We're able to do Medicare, of course, and things along those lines. But when we start looking at, again, the product selection and the solutions that we have, it kind of fits underneath the product portfolios that you see there. And we're going to spend a little bit of time going over those. A big thing that you're going to hear me talk about today is choice, because you do have choices. And that's something that for a lot of people, that isn't something that they've really found or thought of when they think about health insurance. But there are a lot of different solutions. And that's part of what we do, is looking at all the different choices. This is not a one size fits all approach. That may be something that is something you've heard about, like an association health plan or something along those lines. And unfortunately, no one is able to offer that association health plan, which is in essence just a group health plan that would be available to all the members at a set rate. Even if that was available, it would be one of our options. It wouldn't be all of our options. And the reason for that is that, we really have found that people, that they want choices. There's different things that they need. Their unique situation is going to dictate the type of coverage that we look at. And a one size fits all solution doesn't necessarily accomplish that. So it really is about choice. And we're going to go over some of those choices here today. I think it's important to note that, from a cost standpoint, why are we here today? A lot of people are looking at, this saying, I need, a more affordable health insurance, or I need, lower costs, things along those lines. And, health insurance is, for individuals, it's, outside of rent or mortgage, it's typically the second highest expense that you have within your budget. Same for businesses when you get outside of things like payroll, so the benefit side of things. And what we're really looking for here today is to kind of go through the options, talk to you about those, and really help you find those affordable solutions based on your own unique situation. It's important to note too, as we get into this, is that open enrollment period. I mentioned this earlier, John mentioned it as well. There's a couple different enrollment periods that are based on the type of coverage. We're getting ready for annual enrollment. Annual enrollment starts for Medicare on October 15th and runs through December 7th. So if you or a family member is looking for a Medicare solution, that would be the time of the year where you can get a plan without any limitations. If you've not enrolled in the past, want to make changes to the types of plans that you have, you're getting ready to turn 65. These are the things that we look at, or the time of the year where you can do this without any limitations. If you are getting ready to turn 65, you have a little bit different window of time. You're not beholden to the open or annual enrollment period, but at the same time, you need to be aware of the different dates that are here. If you're under 65, the typical open enrollment period is November 1st through December 15th. There is typically a secondary enrollment window that goes from December 16th through January 15th. And then I think California typically in the past has gone all the way to the end of January with that. But what's important to note here is that these would be for coverages for the first phases, the annual enrollment period for Medicare and the open enrollment period for under 65. These would be for plans that start on January 1st, 2025. If you are an employer and you're looking at options there, you can typically do or change those types of plans at any time of the year. If you have questions on this or you're even not sure, that's something where, we can, have you drop in a question here today, or we can have that answered for you later on if you're just not sure. We're going to jump into what are the options that are here today. And one of the areas that we usually start with is what is called either ACA coverage or Obamacare, depending on what you want to call it. The idea behind these plans are that these are for individuals and families that are under the age of 65. This is real insurance. There's, nothing hokey about it. A lot has changed since Obamacare or the ACA became a reality 14 or 15 years ago. A lot of the misconceptions that are out there based on these types of plans, that's not reality anymore. It's a very solid marketplace today. A lot more carriers have gotten into the market or came back into the market. And some of the things that really are beneficial, or I should say, really the benefits of the ACA plans are things like the fact that they have to cover you for pre-existing conditions. You're never going to pay more or less for a plan based on a pre-existing health condition. It also has built in the 10 essential health benefits, which we'll touch on a moment. But the idea is that, even if you got sick with one of these plans, you're not going to pay more the next year, which is kind of counter to what happens a lot of times with, say, a group health insurance plan, where you'll see rate increases a year later after someone gets sick on those type of things. In many cases, individuals will qualify for subsidies. It is based on your financial situation. During COVID, there was a passage of the American Recovery Plan Act that changed the way subsidies were done. That is right now in place through the end of 2025. They're, looking at extending that beyond that. But for right now, the way the subsidies work are a lot different than what happened originally with the subsidies. In the past, if you made a certain dollar amount, your family was a certain size, or, a couple of those different factors together, you just kind of hit a cliff and there was nothing. And today they've increased the thresholds for people qualifying, and they've also made it more of a gradual downhill. You do reach a certain level that you won't qualify for a subsidy based on your total income, but it is more of a gradual downhill. The plans that we're talking about with ACA, they can be accessed at any time of the year if you have a QLE or qualifying life event. Outside of that, you need to do it during the annual enrollment or open enrollment period, which is what we talked about, that November 1st for the initial phase through December 15th. And that's for coverage that would start on the 1st. But things like a qualifying life event or job changes, you've moved, gotten married, divorced, birth of a child, you have something called an ICRA. There's a few others that play into that as well. But if you haven't had a QLE or you're not in that open enrollment period, there are still options that you can get throughout the year. And we'll talk about those here in a moment. Wanted to highlight the 10 essential health benefits, which is one of the kind of core aspects of why the ACA plans really are very beneficial for the majority of the people that participate in these plans. They have to offer these, and these are the base minimums. In some states, they do offer additional benefits, but they all have to, depending on the state, they all have to offer these 10 elements. Ambulatory patient, which is basically outpatient coverage, emergency room, emergency services, hospitalization for things like surgeries or overnight stays, pregnancy, maternity, newborn care before and after, mental health and substance abuse disorders, including behavioral health treatment, counseling and psychotherapy, prescription medications, rehab, and similar. So PT, if you've gotten injured and you need to get rehab, you turned your knee or had a shoulder injury and you need to get back into the swing of things, pun intended, that's covered as part of this lab services. So things like blood work and others. The big thing on this, which, I think I always want to point out, is the preventative aspect. And that's what a lot of the ACA is about, is preventative and wellness services, encouraging you to go get things like your annual physicals, your well person visits, your well children visits, things like I shouldn't say annual, but colonoscopies, women's health, mammograms, things along those lines. Those are typically done at no cost or low cost, and that's a big part of the ACA. And it's trying to get ahead of it, keeping you healthy as opposed to dealing with sickness or an injury after the fact. The last on this is the pediatric services. So, well kid visits, but it also includes for those that are under 18, oral and vision care. These plans also have to include birth control coverage and breastfeeding coverage. And again, in a lot of states, including California, there are some additional benefits that do get included. And those are things that one of our agents can go over with you if you have questions about that. So then we start, looking again at the individual plan options that are out there. We move into what is, some of the other options, short-term or MEC plans. These are not ACA compliant plans. Doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. They're just a different type of plan. In many cases, we use these as bridges to get you from one point in the year to maybe when open enrollment's happening, if you haven't had a QLE. For someone that's relatively healthy, doesn't have any pre-existing medical conditions, a MEC plan might be a good alternative for year-round coverage. Short term is what it sounds like, short term. Up until just recently, you could get them for up to 3 years. But starting on September 1st of this year, you can now get a short-term plan for a maximum of 4 months. It's 3 months with a bonus month added in. But these are, again, temporary type plans that you would get as a bridge to get you from one point to another. They are medically underwritten. So especially the short-term plan. So if you have pre-existing conditions, they may not be a plan that would be a good fit for you or a good alternative. But those are things where we can kind of go through that with you if you're looking at different options. Part of our needs-based analysis that we do is to ask you about your health situation and, get into that in a minute. But, understanding if you have a pre-existing condition or not. If you do, we may not even recommend this type of plan. Just so you know, a MEC plan stands for minimal essential coverage, and it is what it sounds like. It's basic. It's the bare minimum of types of plans that are available out there. They are not necessarily ACA compliant, but they do include a lot of the same type of coverages. The biggest thing I think to note here is that they're not bad. They just have restrictions and they won't cover things like pre-existing conditions. And there are some time limits to take into account depending on the type of plan, either the short term or the MEC plan, depending on what you're looking for. The next thing we're going to talk about from an individual standpoint is Medicare. And I did put two different things on this slide, two different terms, Medicare and Medicaid. I do that for a reason because a lot of times people do confuse these or use the terms interchangeably, and they are very different. Medicare is really what we're talking about here today. This is for coverage for those who are over 65. Even if you have traditional coverage through your employer, you need to look at, what are your options around Medicare. There's some changes happening for 2025 with drug coverage. And those changes are going to significantly impact people. In the past with Medicare, your prescription drug coverage was not capped. And for a lot of people, that became problematic from a cost standpoint. Starting in 2025, for those that are 65 and over, your out-of-pocket expenses for prescription medications will be capped at $2,000 a year. And that's where you have your Part A, your Part B, your Part D. Your D is your drug coverage. If you're on an employer plan, you need to take a look at what if their plan that they're offering you is considered credible. If you have gotten a letter that says your Medicare is not credible with your employer plan, you need to take that into account and look at getting at least your Part A and your Part D. And this is again where one of our licensed Medicare agents can go over, your situation with you and figure out what is the best solution. The problem with having a non-credible plan from an employer, if you are age 65 and over, is that you could actually have, as that employee, a lifelong penalty for not getting Part D in a timely manner, or at least having that part taken care of. So this is where, not to scare you or to make anybody nervous, but if you're not sure, definitely take the time and schedule an appointment with one of our Medicare agents, and they can go over what your situation is, looking at that group plan you may be on, or if you're looking to maybe go 100% Medicare, either with the traditional supplemental approach, which is A, B, D, and maybe what they call Medigap plan, or with something called Medicare Advantage, which basically takes all those alphabets together and lumps them into one clean, neat package that has more of a look of a traditional health plan. It includes Part D and Part A and Part B and so forth. Part A and B, it covers things like your hospitalization, your primary care physicians. Your Part D takes care of your medications, and then the Medigap plans kind of fills in the blanks where those other types of coverages don't cover it. The Medicare Advantage does all of that for you. So again, situational, and we can go through those options with you. Medicaid, just to make it very clear here, is typically meant for those that are low income. It's based on obviously income, but family size. It's typically used by people that are low income, families, children, pregnant women, elderly, because you can, depending on your financial situation, have both Medicare and Medicaid, and people with disabilities. It's nothing bad about it. We don't do Medicaid for individuals. If we ever find someone in one of those situations, we can make recommendations on to the proper resources in the state they live in to get those types of coverages. Do you travel? If you're traveling internationally, or you're in the country from outside the United States and you need health insurance and you don't have or cannot access, say, the ACA plans here for some reason, depending on your visa status, or if you're going to be spending significant amount of time outside of your home country, outside the US or Canada or wherever, you might look at an international health plan. This is not travel insurance. This isn't meant for someone that is spending 2 weeks in Europe on a riverboat cruise. That would be typically travel insurance. This is meant for longer periods of time. You're spending, 6 months in Canada and 6 months in the U.S., or 6 months in the U.S. and 6 months in Mexico, something like that. But a significant amount of time. You have a child who's going to be traveling abroad, studying abroad, going to Italy for, studying architecture, something to that effect. We do have a number of different plans that can help cover you for that international coverage, either, outside the United States, or if someone is foreign born coming into the United States, there are options. They are medically underwritten, so, you do have to go through that approval process. But they can be used for both under 65 and under 65 and over 65. So it isn't dependent on, the types of rules that we have here per se. But again, understanding what your situation is, what you're trying to do, is we can make some recommendations based on that. Outside of the things we were talking about, which were major medical plans, they're the options that you really have access to. There are some things like health ministry, health sharing accounts, which we really stay away from because they're not insurance. You're hoping that they're going to maybe pay some of your medical bills, but it is not guaranteed. They're not ACA compliant. So we stay away from those types of coverage options because they really aren't insurance, and they really aren't going to offer you the guaranteed protections that these types of plans have. But outside of the major medical plans that we were talking about, you do need to take into account, or should consider, things like the supplemental accounts, which are here, things like vision, dental, life insurance, critical illness, hospitalization. These are all plans that fill in the gaps of what your major medical doesn't do or won't do. If you got into an accident and you hurt your mouth, your teeth, something along those lines, your major medical would typically cover that. But things like a cavity, or you need a bridge, or you know, just general dental, care, cleaning, those types of things, that's where dental insurance comes into play. Same thing with things like vision, critical illness and hospitalization for those that are, say, at 1099 or independent contractor. These, really help protect you for the things that might happen, because they do offer lump sum payments so that you can continue to pay bills and to, lifestyle and things along those lines. So it's meant to kind of act in that same capacity as maybe some of the disability type insurances, long or short term, that you might have through an employer. But these are set up for an individual situation. So again, looking at what your goal is, what you're trying to accomplish, what your current situation is, this is where we can make recommendations beyond just, say, getting an ACA plan or a MEC plan, and look and see, is a dental plan or vision plan, critical illness or hospitalization, how does that all work together? You're never forced to buy one to get another. Everything that we are doing is a la carte. So if you have great coverage through a spouse, but you need, say, a critical illness or hospitalization plan, you can just get those types of plans. So there really is a lot of flexibility in what we're able to do. And again, it comes down to choice and figuring out what makes the most sense for you. If you are Medicare age, most of these plans are available to you as someone who is over the age of 65. And it really is just, again, situational, and going through what your options are and understanding what your unique situation is and the choices that you have. I'm going to touch ever so briefly here on some of the group or the employer plans that we have. Traditional group health insurance, which I think everybody's very familiar with. This is where a company is offering their employees, say, a traditional like Blue Cross plan or Kaiser plan. Everybody has access to the same basic type of plans. The employer pays for part of it. The employees pay for part of it. There are some, rules and regulations. Most of the time, you have to have a 70% participation rate. Normally, you're going to have at least two W-2 employees. The biggest benefits for these types of plans are the familiarity. People are familiar with this approach and that type of thing. The tax advantages for the employer as well as the employee, and obviously employee retention in offering benefits. Another option that we look at, which I'm really bullish on, is what is called an HRA, or in the sense there's more than just one HRA, but an individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement. The HRA stands for health reimbursement arrangement. And then there's also something called a qualified small employer health reimbursement arrangement. Basically the same type of plans are just used a little bit differently. These are a way to do an alternative to traditional group health plans. Work very similarly. The biggest difference is the employer is not picking a actual health plan for their employees. That's done on the back end by the employees. You could have 10, 20, 100, or 1,000 employees and have 10, 20, or 1,000 different health plans because the employee is picking an ACA plan, an individual ACA plan for themselves and their family. And what the business is doing is giving them a reimbursement, a pre-tax lump sum of money each month to help offset the cost of their premiums on those individual plans. Again, kind of the idea of choice. This gives the business the flexibility of being able to really focus on the financial side of things, not having to worry about large rate increases from year to year because they are individual health plans. It's not group rated. So one employee getting sick in this approach isn't going to impact any other employee. And then the employees have the ability to pick a plan that works best for them and their unique situation, which you cannot do with a traditional group health plan. If your doctor's not in network with a traditional group plan, you're kind of out of luck. You're either going to have to find a new doctor or go out of network, which sometimes can be problematic. Here, we're working with you to find the plan that works best based on the different needs-based analysis, which I'll get to in a moment here. But this is another alternative that can really work for a company trying to offer coverage to their employees. We do have some additional elements to the program that can be used either from an individual standpoint or from an employer standpoint. Medicare education, again, really helping to educate you about what are the options in the market for you or for your employees. COBRA alternatives, if you're leaving a job or a family member is leaving a job and they've been offered COBRA, in many cases, you're better off not taking COBRA and looking at some of the plans that we talked about here today. And then also non-benefit eligible employees. If you have or work at a facility that has a lot of non-benefit eligible employees, they're part-time or they are seasonal, things along those lines, they still may need help with getting access to health insurance. And we built into this program have an element that can help those non-benefit eligible employees get access to health coverage. So very, comprehensive from that standpoint. When we do talk about the group side of things, there are the same kind of supplemental dental, vision, 401k pensions, those type of things that we can, participate or help you participate in at a company. Just the basics. I won't, kill this one and spend a lot of time on it. Um, Really, how do you access this program? That's, always a big question, and we're going to go through that a little bit today. You've probably gotten at least an email or so for or about this program since it's launched. I know we've had a few members that have already reached out, and we'll go through kind of that process. This program is open to all members of the Southern California PGA. This is real insurance. It's not a discount program or a limited network. We've talked about that today. But this is also not a group plan that's one single plan for every member. That's what is called an association health plan, and we can't do those today. Those are being debated on a national level with the government, and we'll see if and when they can ever get their act together to allow that to go forward. If it does become an option down the road, we will incorporate that into this type of program, but it won't be the only solution. We'll still continue doing what we do because we know people do need choice and do want options. There's no extra cost or fee to you as a member to use our services or to get quotes. You're never going to pay more or less for a plan. The rates are set with the state or federal government, depending on the type of program we're talking about. If it's under 65 versus Medicare, that's state versus federal there. The rates are set there. We're not able to discount. No one can. If you have a broker that's telling you that they can get you a discounted price, that's not accurate. They can't do that. You do have options all year round. And these plans are designed to match your health and financial situation. This is really what that needs-based analysis is that I was talking about. When you meet or sit down with one of our licensed agents on the phone, they're going to go through and get an understanding of your health situation, your financial situation, your lifestyle, things like your prescription medications, doctors and hospitals that you want to make sure are in network. Those are all the things that we'll be able to use to boil it down to the 2 or 3 plans that make the most sense. Most individuals in the state of California are going to have about 100 to 125 plans that are available to them. And part of what our job is to get that down to the 2 or 3. You have bronze, you have silver, gold, platinum plans, the MEC plans, the short-term plans, the international plans, Medicare. We will then, kind of get it down to what makes the most sense for you based on your situation. You don't go to the doctor very often. You need, very basic. You just want to have coverage just in case. A bronze plan may be the way to go. You're married, have 3 kids, get ear infections, not you, but your kids all the time. They're going to the doctor a lot more often. Maybe a gold plan makes more sense. You might pay a little more per month, but your out-of-pocket expenses are going to be typically lower. So it's always a little bit of a balance. And then understanding who and what you want to do as far as your providers, doctors, and hospitals really come into play too to make sure that the policies we're recommending are going to cover those doctors. That's the difference of working with us. We're going to be able to do all this in a very quick or short amount of time compared to you doing it on your own. And be able to pull together all the resources. So we can look at state exchange plans, off exchange plans, which are direct to carrier. We can look at the MEC in the short term. We can pull in all the vision and dental and critical illness, things that you wouldn't be able to do easily on your own, and be able to quote you right there and then, and verify doctors and hospitals and prescription drugs. We do work with a few different partners, and it's important to note one of the biggest partners, obviously, we work with are the insurance carriers. We are licensed, as I mentioned, in all 50 states. We work with really just about every carrier in the marketplace. So that's a big part of what we do in getting those relationships so that we can find all the available plans. If we're doing something with an employer, we do work with TPAs, which are third-party administrators, another type of partner that we work with, but that's to help facilitate the back office side of things as far as the employer plans are concerned. Um, for you, again, choice. It's a big part of what we do. We are, really taking this as a concierge approach for you. This is, kind of a white glove. You have a resource that is there when you need it. It's not something that happens just at a certain time of the year during open enrollment. This is available to you all year long. It's also long term. So if you do get a policy and we work with you to get that, and we are then your broker of record, you have ongoing support. You have an issue with a claim. You didn't get your card. This happens in California a lot more often than, well, I'm sure you understand, but verifying um, uh, legal status or immigration status, things along those lines. That happens. The carriers will send those out. The exchange covered California will do that from time to time. Not a big deal. Can't ignore that paperwork, and that's where we can help in making sure that that gets done the right way with you. We can't do it for you because you own your own health plan, but we can work with you to make sure that you're doing it the right way and that you're getting it submitted. And if you have those types of questions, that's what we're here to do. You need to submit a claim, you got denied, and you have to file an appeal. We can work with you to make that happen, and be there with you throughout the process to make sure that that is what is being done. Coverage for what we do can start with one individual and go to unlimited lives. So there really isn't any limitations from that standpoint. We've talked about this a little bit, so I'm not going to beat this to death. But again, it's plans based on your needs, your family's needs, your health, financial, your lifestyle, travel, those type of things, doctors, hospitals. I think the biggest thing to mention is that when you do contact us, we're not doing anything with your contact information. We're not selling it. You're not going to have your phone blow up. If you go out to Google and you type in health insurance near me, you fill out what looks like an insurance form. Chances are you've gotten to a broker, but it's not a insurance broker. It's a list broker, and they're going to turn around and sell your information. Your phone will blow up. Your text messages will blow up. Your email will blow up. We don't do that. And that's not something that we do here. But we will not do anything additional with your information other than contact you about the quote you're requesting. So you're not going to get a call from us 6 months from now about an extended car warranty or things along those lines. But our job here is to make getting health insurance a great member experience. I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning going, "Hey, I'm looking forward to talking about health insurance today," maybe outside of our staff and our team. And we're here to make this an easy process for you. As I mentioned earlier, everything that we do can be purchased a la carte. So if you're looking for a very specific type of plan, or you want to look at all your options, that is, a big part of what we do. Um, we talked about this a little bit. I'll breeze over these just from the standpoint of, I know the majority of the members here today are probably 1099 or independent contractors, but we do have the options for the employer side of things, the traditional plans, the HRAs, which we spoke about. Um, when you start, looking at the benefits on those, the tax side of things, the control, the ability to have the concierge service that we've been talking about here today, that's all built into these offerings. How do you access this program? Well, you've probably received at least an email or two for this about this program from your organization. In that email, you're typically going to have a phone number. You're also going to have a link to your exclusive portal page. Those are usually the two ways to get through to us. If you do have your phone out and you're watching this on a laptop or a computer, you can scan that. That'll take you right to it. I'll have the actual address here in a moment. But just to remind you, there's no cost, there's no obligation, there's no high pressure sales with what we do. This is a concierge approach for you and your family. You access through that 800 number. And again, we're not going to do anything additional with your information outside of contacting you for it, for the quote. There is on the form, when you go to the web page, there's a form and it's going to ask for your first and last name, your city, your state, your zip. We don't ask for your street address. We don't need that. And it also helps protect your privacy. We will ask you what it is that you're looking for. Individual coverage, really for you and your family. Medicare, are you a 1099 independent contractor, sole proprietor, or are you looking for coverage options for your W-2 employees? By filling that out, that helps us get it over to the right staff here within LIG, and we can best serve you from that standpoint. So that's really how you access the program or get into that. If you are looking to get into the program today, the web address for that is ligmembers.com/SCPGA, so Southern California PGA. There is a exclusive 800 number for your organization, which is the 833-218-7852. And if you have questions and you're not sure where to go or what to ask, I'm available. You can always call me. My direct dial number 216-487-6152. I will either try to answer the question for you or I will get you the appropriate team member within LIG. You can always send me an email. Again, I'll either try to answer it for you or get you the right team member here within our organization. But my email address is tmcnichols, which is TMCNICHOLS at ligsolutions.com. And with that, I will actually take a breath, stop talking for a moment, and see if there's any questions.
Tim, thank you so much. Yes, indeed, a wealth of information. And you were right when you started the webinar, when you said this could be overwhelming. I'm completely overwhelmed. I got some questions here. Could you run us through some examples of qualifying life events, QIEs?
Yeah, so a job change would be one. So if you've changed jobs, you're moving from one employer to another, you are moving, and moving is typically like not down the street, but moving from one community to another. That's going to usually qualify for or can be considered a qualifying life event. Getting married, getting divorced, becoming a naturalized U.S. citizen, birth of a child, adopting a child. Those are all like kind of the normal QLEs. Um, Outside of that, if you haven't had a QLE, you're, limited as far as like getting instant access to ACA plans. But as I mentioned, there are some of the alternatives like the MEC plans or short-term plans that we can take a look at outside of the QLE or open enrollments standpoints.
And we've seen this on a lot of different fronts. Me personally, I've seen it here at my club with different members that we have that are in the insurance business. We've seen it with our own insurance here for the employees at South Hills. We've seen it at the section level with section employees. Insurance premiums and prices are going through the roof. In addition to just natural inflation, What are some of the reasons why the huge spike in insurance costs for the upcoming year?
Well, it's I think it differs, when you're looking at it from an individual standpoint versus group, where you see a lot of that movement is on the group side of things, where they're seeing large increases, and a lot of that has to do with the overall health of the population, the employee population. One or two employees. These types of plans, the group plans that are out there, are typically group rated. So they're looking at that overall health. If you have an aging population, or if you've had one or two employees that have gotten, or maybe their spouses or children have gotten really sick, those will be the kind of keys to getting, larger rate increases. We did see a little bit of a rise, like they held back a little bit during COVID, I believe, and you saw a little bit of that come back after COVID, where they kind of made up for that a little bit. But a lot of it is tied to that general population of that employer, because it's group rated to that particular company. On the individual market, you don't see the huge rate increases that you do on the group market. Most states average, I think the average right now is like 3%, is pretty typical. You see some states hold, you know, at no increase, 2-3%. You have a few states that we've seen that have been in the 4 or 5%, but you're not seeing double digit. You're not seeing major increases. But a lot of it comes back to the fact too, competitive on the individual market, where it's competitive. You have a lot more carriers coming back into the market, and a lot more plan options being added in. So this is where we can really be effective, is sitting down and looking at all the different plans. Are you in the right plan? And this is, group conversation. It's also an individual conversation. Looking at what your scenario is. You may have gotten into a plan, and it may be either way over what you really need. So looking at it, like, how often do you use your plan? Are you going to the doctor regularly, or do you need it just there as protection if something does happen? And that's where we can help look at the different options and say, okay, what is the driver here? Is it cost? Is it out-of-pocket expenses? Things like copays and deductibles. There's always a balance to what it is. If you're paying a little bit less per month, you may see your out-of-pocket expenses go up. But that's where some of the other plans that we have can also be protection for that. Things like the critical illness and hospitalization coverage can help offset some of that, because you get that as lump sum money. Like if you were hospitalized and you had one of those plans, they're not, really expensive plans, but you would then look at getting a lump sum payment if you were hospitalized, where you could turn around and use that to pay off your deductible. And depending on how rich of a plan you put together, that may actually cover you for any missed work, or the fact that you can't be out in the links or teaching or something along those lines. So it comes down to that conversation with our agent of saying, let's build out the appropriate, coverage strategy that will take you and your family into account, what you're doing today, what you're planning to do down the road. Are you an independent contractor? Do you have access to other types of coverages? Those all come into play. So a long, drawn out explanation to say that, there are a lot of, things that impact price, but there's a lot of things you can do to impact that, or minimize that impact.
But with supply and demand and more competition coming on board and more carriers, wouldn't that drive the price down?
You would think, but there's this is more my opinion. I mean, it still comes down to a lot of what is needing to be done. Like the hospitals right now are supposed to be putting out what are their prices. That's part of the law today, and that isn't being done across the board, or being very transparent on things. So what are the true costs? And there's a lot of layers to health insurance. There's a lot of layers to health care in general. So I think it comes down to individuals and businesses, people in general, being good consumers. You would never go into your auto dealership, give them your keys and say, fix it, and then just tell me what it costs later. We unfortunately tend to do that as healthcare consumers. You go in and you're not really paying attention to the price. But there could be a big dramatic difference from going to hospital A to going to hospital B, or getting an MRI at the hospital versus going to a outside facility to do that. So I think a lot of that comes down to us in understanding that we do have not just a choice in the type of coverage we get, but you also have choices in the type of care that you get, and you can make some impacts and be positive to your bottom line by being a little bit more aware of where you're getting your care from and how you go about getting some of the coverage done. And a lot of the carriers offer help in doing that, navigators that can help you. If you have to get an MRI, going to the hospital may not be as cost effective as it possibly could be versus going to an MRI, facility down the street, which those exist. So that's just an example, but I think we as consumers have to be very smart about what we do with our own health.
And in terms of us being Californians and being in SoCal, how is our situation uniquely or acutely different than the rest of the country?
There are certain, rules, especially more on the employer side, like the size of the employer, having to offer coverage. But when you start looking at the individual market, it isn't dramatically different from other areas. You have I think some added protections within the type of care that you have or the type of coverages you're getting, some of those essential health benefits built in. There's some different things along those lines that make it a little different in California. Also, too, some of the plans, when you're starting to look at the ACA plans, a lot of them are HMO style as opposed to PPO, and the difference there is like PPO. And I'm not going to get into like the full dynamics on this, but HMO is usually a set network, and you have a certain doctors you have to go through not extra steps, but you have to go through steps to get procedures and things done versus a PPO where you have a little bit more choice. HMO tend to be a little less expensive, and the PPOs tend to be a little bit more expensive because of that choice factor. So understanding like where you want to go for your care can play to that. Kaiser is one of the predominant carriers in Southern California, and for the most part, their plans tend to be an HMO style. So that's something that we always have to take into account and look at those kind of things when we're talking to someone. The other side of it is, and this is not necessarily dependent on the fact that you live in California, but when you're looking to get care outside, like if you're traveling, if you're in an emergency situation, you're fine. There's no issues. Like if you're in Florida for vacation, you step on a piece of glass on the beach and you have to go get stitches or something like that in your foot, you are going to have that coverage and you will be covered. But if you are, spending a significant amount of time out of, say, California, like half the year in California, half the year in Minnesota, whatever, your California coverage you won't have the same type of coverage that you would typically have with, say, a PPO type plan. Um, that you would have living in California, where you would be able to see your primary care. You would have to do that in your home market. You wouldn't have that coverage if you had to get an MRI up in Minnesota. In most cases, they would deny that unless it was pre-approved for some reason, if you weren't back in your home state or your home area. So there's some of those little nuances that you need to take into account, and that's where when we talk with you or have one of our agents go through your kind of needs-based analysis of where you're at, understanding your lifestyle, your travel. Are you spending the majority of your time in California? Do you travel a lot? Those will all impact the kind of recommendations that we would make on the type of coverages that you would want to have.
Thank you, Tim. As we spoke about yesterday when we connected, a large part of our audience this morning are PGA members that are independent contractors, instructors, and they're on the hook for their own insurance. Is
Yep.
there a group plan that independent contractors can join that'll help cut down their costs?
Not today, and that's what I was referring to before as the like an association health plan. Today, that's not something that we can do. California doesn't allow for those. They have some like grandfathered ones from years ago, but they stopped allowing new ones to go forward. And the federal government has also done the same thing. There had been with the last, and this is not a political conversation or statement, other than just the fact of the last administration allowed association health plans to go forward. And unfortunately, there were like 12 states and the District of Columbia, so 13 different states that sued to stop the association health plans from going forward. And the reason being is that time, the way the plans were designed or the approach was designed, they didn't have to conform to the ACA. And so the states felt that that was problematic and sued to have that stopped. And just this April of this year, the Department of Labor came in and fully rescinded the ruling about association health plans because it was all in legal limbo and just on hold. The court proceedings that were in play, those had been put on hold. Those were stopped after the DOL did their work to kill that from the Federal Register, or however that was done. But the idea of an associated health plan is what you're talking about, and unfortunately, that can't be done today. That's why we do what we do and the way we do it. And if and when, and it's more, I think, of a question of when do they allow an association health plan to go forward. Though that will be something that we would bring in. But please note that with an association plan, it is just a group health plan. It's a certain plan. It would be a certain Blue Cross or Kaiser plan at a set rate, and it may not work for everyone. It's not as advantageous as a lot of people think, because it is just one type of plan at a set rate, and it may not cover everything that you need. That's again why we look at it and say it's always about choice and what are the different options. So for today, unfortunately, that can't happen. And that's not an us thing. That's a government regulation thing.
Certainly. Certainly. Well, those are all the questions that we have, Tim, and that's all the time we have this morning on the Catalyst. On behalf of the Education Committee for the SoCal section, we want to thank you for your time and coming on the webcast and educating us. For all the PGA members that are on this morning's call, you will receive 1 PDR credit for attending. I am going to send out a PDF version just because the information was so granular, and we're grateful for that. I'm going to send out a PDF version of Tim's presentation so that all of us on the call, if you got a question, you want to reach out to him after the fact, feel free to do so. And Tim, thanks a lot for your time. Also,
Yeah, thank you.
I think Nora's on this call as well. Also, Nora, thank you for your efforts in helping put this together. And thanks for joining the Catalyst webinar, everybody. Have a great day and be safe.
Thank you.